What is up, Honey Badger Nation? Thank you guys for tuning in to another episode of Expert Mentors Live. And I'm really excited to dive in today and definitely get into where I tend to geek out, right? Getting in on more the internal side of things, and just in my experience, all of the external stuff really doesn't matter if you can't get the internal stuff dialed in. So appreciate you guys jumping in, and Chanel, welcome.
Thank you, John. Thank you for having me. But it's true, right? I think that we are an industry who really focuses on how people perceive us from the outside, and we don't spend a lot of time on the inside. So, there's so many new agents coming into our group, especially, and coming into the industry. And so anything that we can share today that can really help these agents as they are creating their own process from the inside. So we talk about SOPs a lot, as far as building our business. So what are we doing for SOPs for our lives? And so that's what I really want to touch and dive into today.
I love that. And, you're going to be speaking my language. And so before we kind of jump in, I would love for you to, give some context and about who you are, a little bit of your background and story, so people kind of understand, kind of where you're coming from. And, this Honey Badger Nation, it's incredible. The community's 13,000 and growing, and there's just some of the best, real estate professionals and some of the best humans on the planet that are a part of this community. And I would love for you to kind of share a little bit about yourself before we dive in.
So, John, I didn't know we had this in common, but I'm an Oklahoma girl.
Well, I saw that. I was going to ask you, where at in Oklahoma?
So I am in Pauls Valley. So
Okay.
If you just go straight down I-35, 30 minutes south of Norman, I grew up in a hometown of 4,500 people. We might be 4,600. We might be 4,400. My parents are still there. Loved growing up in Oklahoma. I went to University of Oklahoma for a couple of years and then transferred out to Carolina in Chapel Hill. And a lot happened, after I graduated, but made our way back to Chapel Hill about 12 years ago. And I really touched upon real estate when I was in Miami, lived in Miami for about a decade. And it was a very different market there, as you can imagine, than being in Oklahoma or in Chapel Hill. And so I got my feet wet, but really dove into it when I came to Chapel Hill around 7 years ago. So we have 3 boys. And so after the littlest was about 3 years old, I really dove in feet first, started with Coldwell Banker, transferred to a small boutique firm, and then went over to EXP about 29 months ago. Phenomenal process. And so, within that and through that, I've learned a lot in a very, very short period of time. So, unlike a lot of people, I didn't grow up with real estate in my background. I don't know that I knew I wanted to be a realtor for a long time. I was a lobbyist for quite a while and an actor for a while. So, a lot of characteristics that were the same as focusing on real estate, but it was very natural for me. And so I found my niche, I started growing it, and really have continued to stay true to myself. So I'm a very sphere-based, referral-based business. Did a large number for an individual, I feel, last year, moving into 2023 really strongly. And now, it's really about focusing on well-being and health.
I love that. And so, obviously Oklahoma and small town, I always talk about, Lawton would be the big city compared to Pauls Valley. And, I think being able to be in those atmospheres and being able to be in that type of environment really helps shape the way, we think and the way we behave. And it's true blessing. I mean, honestly, Jay and I say it all the time, is that there would be no Honey Badger Nation if it wasn't for Lawton, Oklahoma. And, being able to be in a small town to where the details matter, the I's are dotted, T's are crossed, and, every facet is important, to, get to a level of success to where, you're able to have the time freedom or freedom to do really what you want and live the life you want. And so like I hear a lot of similarities, small town, then into a whole stratosphere in
Massive.
in Florida, and then even, you know, the dynamic in the Carolinas, and it's the same for us, right? Being in Lawton, Oklahoma, and then into, you know, Frisco, Texas, and so being able to have that dynamic, and then for me, from a coaching, being able to work with, you know, agents all over the planet, but how that shapes your thought process and the way that you know, we behave and the things that we do. It's an absolute blessing to be able to see all of the different ecosystems and the different environments. And, you know, I love where we're going to go with this, but, you know, we talk a lot about kind of our early success, to where, you know, we climbed to top 10 in the world for Caldwell Banker out of Lawton, Oklahoma, and really not understanding the internal game as much as we focused on the external activities and the focus and the strategies and, you know, the tactics and the things from there. And I talk a lot about, you know, that year that we hit top 10 in the world, we were we were miserable. Like, we stressed our way there.
And what did you compromise to get there? So
everything.
Right. And so the blessing of growing up in a small town, I always say, instead of 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon, we're 1 to 2 degrees in Oklahoma, right? I guarantee if we got into a 30-second conversation outside of Jay, right? Everybody knows everybody in Oklahoma. It's a small state. And I mean that in a beautiful way, because everyone truly cares about everyone. And so you don't even realize how important that is until you start creeping away from it slowly. So the more that you creep away from it, it just doesn't feel right, but you don't know why. And so you nailed it, John. So you had this massive financial success. So most people consider you successful, checked all the boxes, you know, consider it done, but you weren't.
Right.
But you weren't. And then you kind of turn back around and you go, okay, so I checked these boxes, but how do I feel? And how do the people around me feel? Do my children know who I am? When was the last time I spoke to my parents? What about all my friends? You know, and it's tough.
Yeah. So, and I think this is where I kind of, you know, really understand the importance of this, because it's that inward look before the external things start to happen. Like I said, we stressed our way to that point. Most miserable health wise. Drink, not for social fun, but drink, because
right, and just to come off, right, just so you could relax and not be so stressed out. Yeah. And
so, you know, those other main buckets of health and relationships suffer for what? Right? For what? Like, I mean, I don't even know where those plaques and trophies are anymore. It don't matter, right? And so I think it's so important to be able to have that growth, and it starts from within. And I would love for you to kind of, how you started to develop this. I love to hear, you know, where you had that aha, and really what changed for you to understand the importance of internal before, you know, the rewards of the external.
So I grew up with financial security and didn't know what financial insecurity was. And so I think that a lot of us grow up and we leave our parents' nest and we want to prove something to them. We want to prove to ourselves that we can take care of ourselves. And so there was some financial insecurity for a large amount of my adult life. So for me, security and success meant money in the bank. That's what it meant. And so I worked very, very hard to not have to think about, do I need to look at my bank account before I go to the grocery store? How many things can I actually purchase? You know, can my child have this but not have this? And so it was important to me that I garner my own success, which in that moment in time meant financial security. And so once that happened, and you know, we can actually live with very little, right? It's interesting when you ask people, what is financial security to you, the massive amount of responses that you receive. So because I grew up in a small town and we didn't need a lot, but I was always secure, I didn't need much to get there. So then once I got there, I kind of started taking a step back and saying, okay, so how do I feel? And what is making me happy? What does it mean to be happy? What does it mean to be unhappy? I started looking at my cortisol levels. I started looking at my dopamine levels. I started looking at all of these things that were happening in my life and what was driving my decisions. And, we are all on this planet for a finite amount of time. And we're all, I feel, in one way or another in this industry because we want to help, because we want to provide value. We want to help others, whatever transition they are in their lives, whether it's an agent, whether it's a consumer, we're all here to help in some way. That is in all of us. That's why we're drawn to this industry in one way or another. So then it was, how do I go ahead? Financial security is there. Now I need to really go back to me and see what is driving me and why were those patterns set up, and how do I redirect those patterns so this doesn't continue forever. And so it's a constant process, but it's one that I'm really able to identify. So being in the acting world, you learn very quickly what's in your control and what's not in your control. Similar to real estate. So what was in my control was making sure that I was off book, how I looked, being on time. What was not in my control is when a director in an audition looked at me and said, yeah, I don't like her. Like I wasn't even in the room. Yeah, she reminds me of that ex-girlfriend I can't stand. Or the client's like, I can't stand that curly hair. Oh my God. Like those are not in my control. And so what I had to start focusing on, instead of that dopamine hit of getting the job, it was the satisfaction of knowing that I did my best, the satisfaction of knowing that I felt very, very good about the quality of the human being that I was when I walked in the room, and not compromising who I was to get there. And so similar to real estate, right? So you've heard, I'm sure, and you have clients and you have agents whom you coach, and they're like, I'll just take any listing or any lead that comes in. I don't care. I just want the lead. I just want the lead. So why are you compromising yourself? And what does that look like? And what is the need for that dopamine hit, for that satisfaction? And so I'm really starting to look at that entire process, because I did for myself, so I can help agents in my group just live a healthier life. Focus on the process. Don't focus on the result. And that is going to bring you so much more in the long haul of things.
I get it. And understand, kind of what you're saying, and just because I think we can speak the same language. However, if you don't have the tools or the framework, and like you were being judged, I mean, that can be just absolutely devastating.
Absolutely,
and
no question.
Can paralyze you. So what are some of the tools and frameworks that worked for you, to where, hey, that person's just judging, that's out of my control, there's nothing I can do with it, because that's not instinctively the reaction, because
no, not at all. And it wasn't mine.
It triggers our fight or flight.
Yeah.
And so how, for you, what were the tools, the framework that helped you overcome that and not be paralyzed by that?
So I make it sound simple. It wasn't simple. It didn't just happen overnight. And it's something that I'm still constantly working on. I mean, we deal with a massive amount of rejection in whatever form you want to say rejection is in this business. So the first is that you have to work on your own inner self-confidence. Where does that self-confidence come from, right? So as you know, EXP, we offer more education than any other real estate firm in the world. And so the more that you educate yourself, the higher your self-confidence is, and the more you tap into your inner superpower. We all have our own personal superpower. But if you're not familiar as to what your superpower is, if you're not familiar as to who you are, the best thing I did about leaving Oklahoma is I knew everybody and I was so comfortable where I was. I just uprooted myself and I moved to Chapel Hill, where I did not know one single person. Now, not everybody's going to have the bandwidth to do that. But what I learned in that process was exactly who I was. I learned where my fears came from. I learned what made me happy. I learned what I constantly avoided and what I really naturally went to. If you have not taken the time to get to know yourself, you've got to take the time to do it. And what does that mean? People ask me that all the time. And I said, it's so old school, but it works. Just journal. Would you journal just 10 minutes? Just 10 minutes in the morning. Just take something out and write down your thoughts. And if you've never done it before, it's really uncomfortable, right? It's like, what am I writing? I don't know. Chanel told me to write something so I can learn who I am and tap into my superpower. But when you start doing that, eventually you get below the surface and you really start figuring out, wow, I'm really afraid of this. I'm afraid of success. I'm afraid of being judged. I'm afraid of someone saying no to me. I'm afraid of not getting that financial security. So I had to slowly over time, and it's not perfected, but I had to build my own self-confidence and realize I couldn't turn to others to create happiness for myself. I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
Because it was a constant downward spiral.
So, super intrigued around confidence and the gap within confidence. So for you, developing that self-confidence, what are some of for you, like, what does that mean, right? How do you grow that self-confidence?
So I'll put it in perspective as a realtor. So when I go on a listing appointment, or I work with buyers, but I generally just work with sellers, I learned the North Carolina exclusive listing agreement front and back. I could literally tell you every single paragraph, every single page. I knew it like the back of my hand. And that gave me full confidence when I walked in the door. If any questions were asked about that, about the neighborhood, about the county, about the triangle, about what's going on in the nation, what's going on with all the finances, what's going on with interest rates, I just know. So when you know something, you relax into it. And when you can relax, you can just be yourself more, right? And the more that you're yourself, the more you just naturally either connect or you don't connect. Sometimes I don't connect with sellers, and that's okay too. I've learned very much so that if I don't naturally connect with people, we just weren't meant to work with each other. And that's just fine. There's a huge blessing and a huge present in that as well. But that comes back to, let's circle back around to the financial security and stability. So same thing with the acting. When I was in front of the camera and I needed the job, I have to have the job because I have bills and I have this and I have this. It reads everything. It's like they know. They're like, I don't know. She really wants it. It's the same when you walk in with clients. If they have that feeling that you need it, it's not about them, it's about you. And so then you start compromising things that you otherwise wouldn't compromise. So, I mean, it's so basic, but I think we get so caught up in other processes and other procedures that we forget to just be true to ourselves and be honest with who you are, right? It blows my mind.
So two things. I want to circle back to, the meaning of money, but what is, for you, what helped you uncover, like you saw, that self-awareness, that superpower, and leaning more into that? Like, what was the framework or process that really woke that up for you?
Firstly,
how did you uncover that?
The pain and the depression of getting caught into the rabbit hole of trying to live up to somebody else's expectations or trying to constantly align myself with every single person I met. That is exhausting. And when I saw that I was constantly on this treadmill, and we've all had very specific points in our life that we can be very proud of, right? Each of us, every single person on this planet, something we believed in, something that we felt very good about. And I hold on to those times because that reminds me of the person that I am. So that was number one, is that I very much hold on to those memories that I know made me the person that I am. I then remember how it feels to get caught into the vortex of what other people think about me. And that's not okay. I have too much respect for myself now to do that. I also know what happens when you try to force a situation. Does that work or does it not work, John, right?
Yeah. Force and power, right? Force doesn't work.
It doesn't. And there has to be some trust in yourself. And so then I started really diving into what calmed me the most, what brought me the most peace. And for me in this particular industry, it was educating myself. It was learning as much as I could. So these new agents who are not bombarded with a massive amount of buyers and sellers, I always say, you have the world. The world is your oyster right now. You have nothing but time on your hands to educate yourself in ways that a lot of people don't even create the time to do it right now. You could be leaps and bounds beyond everybody else if you would see the value in educating yourself. Because when you do that, it just implicitly creates this natural ability to just settle right into where you are and have true confidence in that person you are. Once you know that, once you feel that, it emanates and it pushes out to other people. And they're either naturally attracted to it or they're not. But because I'm so confident in where I am and what I can deliver in my process, I know that I naturally attract people who align with me in my path. And yeah, it might sound a little woo-woo to people, but it works. That and, all the other beautiful things that we learn as we grow this business, but those very basic foundational things that a lot of people don't take the time to do and they skip over it. Well, Chanel, I don't understand why this isn't working. This isn't working. Well, how does it make you feel? How are you feeling about yourself? How are you feeling about your business? What's driving you right now? Why do you wake up in the morning? What do you feel like when you go to bed? All those things. People skip over the self-work because they just want to get to the work and they want to get to the paycheck. They want to get to the result. So they completely forget the process in and of itself, which I think is a massive mistake.
It is really the massive mistake. And, you could even, compare it to, obviously, growing up in Oklahoma, I mean, football is everything. You're either a Sooner or a
Boomer
Cowboy.
Sooner, baby. I don't know the other one. I only know Boomer Sooner, baby.
Yeah, me too. And so, you really tie down to, success can be, put back to, okay, what is the next play? Right. And then what am I doing on this play within my control? What is my job within this team? And what am I supposed to do for this play? And within that, how do I trust the process? Right. It's the process of going through the work that we've put in. And that's it. Right. It's so much on the front end. And I think that's where it's the whole imposter syndrome and either the opposite spectrum, right? That armchair quarterback. And it really comes down to, kind of understanding. And you said something there, it's the knowledge base, it's developing the skills and capabilities required to get results. And for me, that's where the confidence comes from. And for you, and I think this is important for people to get, right? And this is that whole confidence gap, is that a lot of people believe they have to feel confident before they are. And it's the opposite. They have to take the action, and then the feeling of confidence comes later.
That's it. You have to take the action. You have to do. You have to do. You cannot. And, we also know agents who are constantly stuck in this education space, and all they do is train and all they do is learn, and they're not actually taking the step forward and moving forward. You have to have confidence in yourself to take that step forward, because that's how you learn. And that's how you start molding who you are and what you want to be in this industry. And, which goes back to, I really started, especially during COVID, which was nuts, right? So you made a choice as an agent during COVID. You either dove in 1,000%, or you step back and you used it as an excuse. It was one or it was the other. And so for those of us who really dove in, it took probably, I would say, the end of 2022 for me, beginning of 23, where I finally stepped back and went, holy shit, wow. Oh my gosh, like that, we didn't stop. We didn't stop at all. And I had to really step back and do an internal check again and go, wow, you talk about a dopamine hit. You talk about dopamine stacking one on top of another, where it didn't stop. And, it would have been easy to get really almost depressed, right? Because our brains were so stimulated for so long that we're like, what do you mean they're not on top of each other? There's not multiple offers, and there's not this and not this and not this. And so to take a step back and reassess what the market is and what my role in that market is, and to go back to the process, was painful but important.
Let's talk about that a little bit more, because what you were saying is that it was coming so fast that it caused a lot of people to just be reactive. And the hits were just coming.
They were.
And then look what's happened over the last 12 months on the downside of it, on the backside of it. And what I have seen happen for a majority of the agents, not everybody, but a majority of the agents, it caused a lot of bad behavior. And you look at that 2.5 year stretch, people were being rewarded for bad behavior.
That's right.
and look on the backside, what are you seeing now that they're out of that reactive state? And is it people becoming paralyzed? Is like, what are you seeing that's happening? We know what we should do, but what are people doing? And how can they, if they're in that fight or flight or freeze, which is another that we tend to forget, fight or flight, but there is a freeze.
There's a freeze. There's one in between.
I see a lot of people are frozen.
Yeah, they are.
And so where is the turnaround to build back? And I know we've talked a lot about it, but just really emphasizing, hey, if you're in this, if you're here, this is where you need to give some attention.
So you nailed so many things in that short period of time. Firstly, I think that we got so used to being rewarded no matter what happened, right? So no matter what our behavior was, or if we half-assed things, or if we, showed up for this, but we didn't show up for this, the results were the same and sometimes even better. So when all that was stripped away and we went back to basics again, I found agents who firstly came into the business in 2020 had no clue what they were, literally had no idea where to start, what to do, how to do it. All self-confidence is gone. The sky is fallen, right? Chicken Little, sky is fallen, sky is fallen. But I also had agents who have been in here for much longer than I have saying, Chanel, this is the worst year I've ever had. And I don't know what to do. And I don't know how to do it. And maybe I should leave the business now. And so I have to really sit them down and I have to say, okay, let's pull the numbers. And let's talk about how many calls have you made? How many actions have you taken? How many steps have you done to build the business that you had prior to COVID? And then it becomes very apparent where the gap is. And then when they actually see that, then there's something to build from. And so I say to these agents and to myself as well,
right?
Where do you want to be?
Yeah.
Where do you want to be? And what is it going to take to get there? And it's literally give yourself some grace in this process, back yourself off a little bit and give yourself some grace, because we all went through a lot. And a lot of people don't talk about that. It wasn't all roses. A lot of people went through an enormous amount. A lot of us lost people very close to us. A lot of us have seen changes in people that they're never going to be the same again. Like that, we saw massive impacts with our clients, with our family, with our friends, everything, but we're just chugging along and working and working and working. So I say, and I don't say this lightly, a lot of us did experience a PTSD a bit because we didn't psychologically work through what was happening. And now that we're on the other end, we don't know where to start. So I say, let's just go back to basics. You all know what this is. And if you don't, let's sit down and let's talk about what that process is again. And give yourself some grace and sit down with somebody you trust, who has a business that is actually producing healthily in 2023. And let's discuss how to get you where you want to go. And, but don't just put your hands up and go, oh, that was it. That's it. I'm going to step out, unless you really weren't in it to begin with.
No, I love that. And do you think that during that time, that's why I say rewarded for bad behavior, that the dopamine hit of success moved to the lagging and moved away from the leading actions? What I mean by that is the dopamine hit, the success was somebody in contract.
It was simple, right?
That's not even ultimately within your control
at all.
Yeah.
At all. And so, you look at what's causing these dopamine hits in agents every single day. It's, getting the phone calls of just a lead, right? Sometimes that's enough of a hit, but then it's when your offer is accepted. It's when you get the listing. It's when you get it under contract. I mean, there's all these different processes that you get these hits. But during COVID, there were so many hits that our brain was stimulated to such a high point that it took a massive amount to firstly to keep it at that level. And then imagine it went from there, and it very, quickly for a lot of people just dropped. And that's tough. Like, you don't even know mentally, emotionally, physically what's going on with your body or why you're responding and reacting that same way. All of a sudden you've got all this cortisol that's just, running through your veins and all through your body, and you don't feel good. And it's been nuts. So I think going back to the basics of, Matt Townsend said it the best, right? He was talking about those micro moments. And so focusing on those micro moments of just positively impacting another human and just being a part of the process, as opposed to constantly revolving yourself around that result, is going to lead to a steady business for you. You know, you've got to plant the seeds. I say that until I'm blue in the face. Plant the seeds, plant the seeds, plant the seeds. And people laugh at me, but I just had an agent call yesterday and she said, Chanel, finally, my garden is growing. She's like, you weren't full of it, right? She said, I mean, I kept planting. You don't even remember all the places you plant. And then all of a sudden it's just boom. But you've got to be patient with yourself in this process.
I love it. And, you know, I love that, right? You know, constantly focusing on planting the seeds yourself. What are the things within your control to be able to do that? You hit on, you know, some of the chemicals that are running through our bodies and how we function, we operate. We talked about journaling as one of the key things to tap into kind of your higher self. What are some of the other activities that us as agents, as humans, really need to commit to really, you know, manage these chemicals and really manage to where we can stay focused and out of the fight, flight, freeze frame? But what are some of the things that we need to commit to on a weekly, daily basis to help proactively manage ourselves at the highest level? So
I'm not a huge believer in lists. I think you need to have an accountability partner. That's one. Firstly, because an accountability partner, you can't lie to, and they're not going to lie to you, right? Or, you know, you can't change that list on an accountability partner. So that's firstly for me huge. I've had to cut back on a lot of my coffee and move to being a tea drinker. That's been massive because caffeine, as much as I love my coffee, caffeine can be very disruptive to our system and to our nervous system and to steadiness, you know, increases our anxiety, increases how we respond to things. That's been massive for me. Skipping breakfast is huge for the brain. It doesn't quite know what to do. Like if you're just very habitually waking up, eating breakfast, some of us eat the same breakfast every morning. If you just literally skip breakfast, your brain's like it's just so happy. And that's something very, very simple. You're going to laugh at me, John. Smells. Put smells in your office or places that evoke in you positivity, evoke in you happiness. If you went to the library a lot when you were at university or in school, you know, there's literally a candle that is library books. I'm not even kidding. But just having smells around you is really, it's a very simple thing, but it really, really, really helps in all of that as well. Another big one that I do is I try to do something new. And this is so silly, but instead of going to the Trader Joe's, sometimes I'll go to Aldi across town. It's totally different. And it's just something, mix up your routine, guys. Stop doing the same thing all the time. If you've never made a phone call before, I can't imagine any of you have not. If you've never made a phone call to a lead or to your sphere, or if you don't have a set time, pick up and actually do it. The happiness it evokes in you of just that little bit of an accomplishment is something to start building a foundation on. Start doing something new, building creative time. Everybody's doing pickleball. Go out and try pickleball. Like go and try something new, something different. Have you ever heard of the bride who does nothing but all she's doing all the time is focusing on the wedding? And she's planning. The wedding happens. It's amazing. You talk to her a week or two later and she is so depressed. She doesn't know what to do with herself. And it's because she was constantly focusing on the results, and then the result happened. And now she's like, now what? If you will just put little things into your day that is going to help you with these, what I like to say, natural dopamine hits, then you can really focus on your business. You can be mindful about it as opposed to, oh my gosh. And y'all just stay off of social. If you're not feeling great about you and your business, don't start going on to social when you're depressed. Like social media was literally created so you could get those mini dopamine hits all day long. The worst thing is if you didn't get a listing or something happened with a client and you go on and you see that so-and-so just landed 25 new deals or just did this or just did that, it just doesn't feel good.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel good. So create habits that make sense to you.
And, I think you have to step back and look at, what's even with social, right? What's their business model? And their business model is to sell ads. And you look at the news, what's their business model?
Right.
And that's why it's all negativity, right? People are drawn to train wrecks, and that helps get eyeballs, and that helps sell advertising. And you have to just remember, what you're falling into is what is the business model here that they're a part of. And I think the other thing, kind of what you said is, okay, how is this serving me in whatever it is I'm in pursuit of?
That's
and
right.
you mentioned that, right? Like, where are we going? And I think that when you get in that reactive state, like a lot of agents, like a lot of people did, for that, that couple year stretch, it tends to lose sight of what we're in pursuit of. And I think for a lot of people, what happens, right? There's, the two worlds, right? You fall into either that circular world to where it's Groundhog Day. And, you mentioned Dr. Matt Townsend, and he has this, thing to where, we're living, which is going down, and then we're learning, and then we have the ability to make a change to lift our life up. Because if we just live, and he said down, right? We're just living down, but we have to learn and make changes to lift. And a lot of people that fall into just this circular, it's down. And before too long, you're gone, you're done.
Yes.
And so it's just learning and lifting, but the lifting has to be moving us into a known direction. Like, where are we going?
And don't you find, John, that there are so many people who just don't take the creative time or the time with themselves to really know where they're going or what they want?
Yeah. And, I keep coming back to Matt. I asked him, as humans, what's the most important thing for us to commit to and focus on moving into the future? And he said, number one is some type of mindfulness practice. And that goes back to the silence, being with yourself, nature, hike, meditation, prayer, whatever that is for you. And then the other is the focus on emotional intelligence. And one of the core tenets of emotional intelligence is what you said earlier, which is self-awareness. And really, uncovering who you are at your core, listening to everything, listening to all feedback loops, and even the negative feedback loops, because, bullies even have a mean way of telling you the truth. And even in the bullying, there is some truth there. And if you're not, self-aware to uncover and see where that is, and, is that something that we can continue to grow? Who do we surround ourselves to complement, but really focusing in on those strengths and focusing on, just keep coming back to things within your control. How important too is like moving your body and exercising and staying, active. How critical is that to being able to kind of regulate these ups and downs that we all, can fall into and experience?
Beyond sleep and diet, it is, for me, it's top three always. It massive shift in me when I don't exercise on a regular basis, because it just naturally emits that serotonin in you. And it's the best way to regulate your moods and increase your serotonin, your happiness, your overall, levels, and decrease that depression. And it's all natural. So I called a doctor friend of mine, and I just said, I'm depressed. Like, this was 5 years ago now. And I said, I really think I need to be on Wellbutrin or whatever those were, which I had no judgment toward those who are, but I'd never been on that before. And I was just not in a great space. And he said, do me a favor. Every single day for the next 2 weeks, I need you to walk or jog or do something that gets your heart rate up for 30 minutes every single day. And he said, at the end of 2 weeks, this time I'll put it on my calendar. Let's talk again. and I did it. And when I tell you, I was a changed woman, and it seems so simple, but if you're not implementing something every single day. Now, I didn't just say 4 days a week, every single day. I don't care what it is. I mean, everyone has the ability to walk outside. You don't make it complicated. You don't have to go join a gym and go be a part of 25 classes. Just walk out your front door and walk around your neighborhood. It is so simple, but it's so important. So I have a very dear friend who's a neuroscientist, and now we're about 3 years ago. And I said, I can't even remember things anymore. I said, Trish, I don't even know what's going on with my brain. And she said, why don't you come in and let's map your brain and let's see what's going on. And so went in, mapped my brain, and she's like, girl, you are running hot. Your brain is off the charts. And so she said, we're going to start some neurofeedback. And, any of us who follow Tony Robbins and others have heard the word neurofeedback. And so I started doing neurofeedback, and that with sleep, which we don't always get, but we try our best, diet, exercise, has been a massive positive shift for me. Massive. And anybody can do it. You don't have to go to a neuroscientist. Go get a Muse online, MUSE. Deepak Chopra. There are many people who are now doing meditations that go along with the Muse, and they are essentially resetting your signals so your brain knows how to relax in anxiety. It's phenomenal.
I fell into the Headspace app. I don't even know how many years ago. I'm like almost 33,000 minutes on the Headspace app. And I can tell you from that mindfulness practice, and I don't sit in silence. I'll be honest with you. So I'll put it on when I start my run. I'll put it on when I get on the bike. I went for a walk this morning, had a late run last night. I'll get something in this afternoon, but this morning I just I'm just going to walk this out. My legs is just tired. I've just, like you said, not enough sleep, travel. So I'm just going to go walk. Yeah. And I put it on in the beginning, for the first, 20 minutes of the walk. And just even that little bit, but it's like you said, on a consistent basis over time. And I can't remember the last time I had anxiety and the last time that I just kind of really worried about anything.
That's right.
And it's just those little things. I believe we're all one habit away from unlocking the next level of our life. And for some, it could be exercise. Some could be mindfulness. Some could be changing the diet. Some could be more water, right? Could be more sleep. It's just one little thing that can unlock the next level. And then once that's implemented, then we're another one little habit away from unlocking the next level. I really, really believe that. One thing I don't want to kind of let this slip out of the conversation. I want to come back full circle to what you kind of shared in the beginning and how you grew up in a belief system with financial security.
Yeah.
And I think, it's the whole who, not how, kind of how we're born into with our parents, our grandparents, kind of instill that belief system in us and kind of forms our relationship to money.
Big time.
And there's a fantastic book. It's called The Psychology of Money. And what he talks about in there is that our relationship to money can be pinpointed to one thing: when you were born. And more so important, were we in an up or were we in a down? People born in in a certain time frame in a recession have a different belief with money than those don't. It was always funny with my dad. My dad would always ask, "What's gas down there? How much is gas price?" I'm like,
same.
I'm like, Dad, I said, I was being kind, but I'm like, Dad, I really don't give a shit what the price of gas.
Yeah.
I don't care. I don't think about that. I pull up, I fill up the tank, and I go. It doesn't even cross my mind.
No.
But that's when I was born.
Yeah.
Versus when he was born. And so for you instilling that financial belief, How has that changed? Has it expanded? Has it contracted? Like what is the relationship to money?
I'm like, we only have 14 minutes left, so I'm going to try my best. But can I tell you, John? So I'm a massive believer in genetic inherited thought as well. So for those who are listening and don't know what that is, that's essentially a massive belief that there are patterns in your brain that are not yours, that they have genetically been passed on to you from generations in your downline, in your line, upline. Look, I'm using EXP words now. And so there was a lot of fear around money. So even though I was very financially stable growing up, there was always a massive fear around money. And so, of course, my father went to Vietnam. He grew up with a father who went to World War II. I mean, you're talking about genetic inherited thought and wars that went on for generations before us. And so this need of higher financial amount coming in means higher rate of success was something I had to really battle myself. And so I also had to really create and understand the concept that money is by far the easiest thing to manifest. By far the easiest thing to manifest. I'm going to say that again. Money is by far the easiest thing to manifest. Stop making it so difficult and complicated. We get in our own way all the time, John, all the time. And it is the fear and how we were born into it, how we were brought up into it, and then the genetic inherited thought that is surrounded around it, that really we either choose to stay in that genetic inherited thought, pass it down to our children and so on and so forth, or we stop, we really look at it, we don't believe it completely, and we start creating new thought patterns, which is not easy to do at all. And when I tell you, my husband and I did not have money for a long time. We did not have money for a long time, but I learned a lot of things. The first thing I learned is that you can be very happy with very little. The second thing I learned is there's not much that we need when you do have the money, right? But thirdly, you want to go manifest it. And that goes back to everything we're talking about. Building the self-confidence, being true to yourself, building that foundation that's inherently yours. If you stay the true path of yourself, the money will come. And again, I know it just sounds, oh, Chanel, it's just so, it's not concrete at all. It's so abstract, but it's not. It's just so simple. People make it so complicated, John.
How for you did in the new thought patterns, the new belief system. So for you, how did you go about restructuring, reframing, reworking that?
So funny enough, you bring up exercise. Exercise was huge for me. So maintaining my mood levels and understanding that I am not one day, my experience in one day or one experience doesn't determine who I am. That was a huge one for me. And so maybe this didn't work out or this didn't work out. Do I have a roof over my head, right? Do I have food to feed myself and others I love? We take in our first world so many things for granted. And we don't fully understand, a lot of us, what sacrifice means or what it means to really struggle. So being extremely grateful with the gratitude of what I had around me allowed me to stay grounded where I was and continue to move forward. That's all you have to do, is continue to move forward with a true path and belief. And it's when you said fight, flight, or freeze, it's when you freeze and you stay right where you are that you're not going to go anywhere. And so you must constantly allow yourself the ability to move forward. Allow yourself the thought of, I can manifest money. I can do this. I can do that. It's very hard to press past genetic inherited thought, but it is very, very possible. You have to look, is that my thought? Was that my idea, or did that come from somewhere else? And be self-aware, right? Thank you, Dr. Matt. Be self-aware of what you're saying, what you're thinking about those who are around you and what they're saying and thinking. Are the people around you? I'm not a full believer in the 5 people around you are the ones who influence you the most. I think you have to look much further out. Who are the 30 people around you? Because yes, 5, but you have to push past that. Who are the 30 people and what are they saying? And what are their thoughts? And are you buying into it or are you not buying into it? And give yourself the ability to not believe every single thing you hear, or stop yourself and go, is that something I really believe, or am I just so used to thinking it and hearing it that I think it's truth?
Yeah, I love that. If you think about that a bit deeper, the 5 or 6, but who's influencing those 5 or 6? And then who's influencing those 5 or 6? And so it does ripple out, and being able to think, beyond that. And that comes back to a higher level of emotional intelligence, and really, why I think Matt is so spot on of having some type of being able to connect back with yourself. But then also, how are you improving, the things, from awareness and regulating these emotions, like we're talking about, finding true motivation, and how to have the social skills and conversations and developing of relationships, because that's key. And then, to me, the cornerstone of emotional intelligence is empathy. Being able to put yourself in somebody else's shoes is absolutely is critical.
It is critical. Oh my gosh, yes.
Chanel, you're amazing. I appreciate you taking the time, jumping in here. I mean, really, this is what the Expert Mentors series is all about. We're over 220 episodes in, and there's just so many incredible, amazing people inside of the best community, inside of the best real estate company on the planet, that are just here to give and pour into. And I can't thank you enough for carving out the time and jumping in and just pouring back into all of these amazing people.
John, you are amazing, and thank you for all you do, and then creating this platform and allowing all of us to share what we want to share and help as many people as we can. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Really, really appreciate that. For you guys listening in, make sure you give Chanel lots of love, get connected with her, follow her. Don't be afraid to reach out if you have any questions, and appreciate you guys, and we'll catch you guys on the next episode. See ya.